Hi, my name is Sunny from wildbound.com. In this video I'm going to show you how to make your own homemade strawberry jam. If you're just learning to can, I know it can be a little intimidating, but I'm here to tell you from my own experience, if you can read a recipe and follow it, you can learn how to can. You are going to need some specialized equipment, but I'm going to go over all that with you before we get started. The most important thing when you're canning is your canner. For fruits, you can use a water bath canner or a steam canner. This is not a pressure canner. I prefer a steam canner because when you're heating it up, you only need to boil about 1 to 2 quarts of water to process your jams or jellies, whatever fruit you're doing, versus boiling 21 quarts of water to use a water bath canner. The next items that I'm going to show you, you'll probably be able to get in a kit that's called a canning kit. It is a lid lifter. This is for picking up your lids out of the hot water. A jar lifter, again for lifting hot jars out of hot water, and a canning funnel. This just goes down and makes it easier to fill up your jars without making a mess. One of the most important pieces of equipment that I have in my canning equipment is the Ball Blue Book of Preserving. This is the best guide for beginners. It's got a lot of different recipes in it, and that's where I got this recipe for making homemade strawberry jam. There are some things you're going to need that you probably already have around your kitchen, like a large stock pot around 7 quarts. You're going to need measuring cups, measuring spoons, and a long-handled spoon like a wooden spoon, and a soup ladle. Tell me what we're doing tonight. Alright, so in the lid of my steam canner, I have filled it up with water, and I've got my jars. These are 8 half-pint jars, and lids and lid rings. I'm going to heat this water up to simmering, and this will sterilize all the jars. It'll soften the rubber gaskets on the lid rings. I've got my water heating here to sterilize the jars. Each of these jars need to be in for 10 minutes after the water starts simmering. First thing I need to do to start making the actual jam is I need 2 quarts of strawberries washed, drained, and then I'll cut the stems off. To get 2 quarts, there are 4 cups in a quart, so I need 8 cups. When you are making strawberry jam, you want to pick the best strawberries that you can find. I picked these personally straight from the plant, so they should be at the peak of their ripeness, which is also the peak of flavor. This will make your final product be much more flavorful compared to what you would buy at the store. So the setup that I've got here is a large colander inside of a large bowl. This will just make it a little bit easier to wash it. I'm going to fill it up until the strawberries were basically just floating, and that'll rinse off all the debris, any dirt from the field or whatever. The next step in the process, you want to put all your strawberries in your stock pot that you're going to be making the jam in. You want to smash them. You don't want more than about 1 layer of strawberries at a time. So if you have more than 1 layer, you're going to want to put in 1 layer across the bottom and smash it, and then put in another layer and smash it. So I've got my strawberries mushed up. I'm ready for the next step, which is to add sugar and pectin and lemon juice. But before I do anything, I want to make sure that my jars are sterilized and ready to fill, because after the pectin starts working, I need to make sure that I am immediately ready to fill my jars. Once your water is boiling and your jars are sterilized, you want to add 7 cups of sugar, 1/4 cup of lemon juice, and 1 package of powdered pectin. Make sure you don't use the kind that's for freezer jam. You're going to put this on the stove, let it heat up until all the sugar is dissolved. You're going to bring it to a boil. You're going to boil it for 1 minute. While your strawberries are heating up, you can use your fork to continue mashing them some more along the side of your pan. That'll just give you a better consistency, a smoother consistency to your jam. A hard boil ends up almost looking like a volcano erupting in your pot. Like so. And you can see how much higher in the pot the jam mixture has come. So, this is where I have to work pretty fast, because while I'm talking, my jam is actually starting to gel. Pull a jar out of the sterilizing water using the jar lifter. I'm dumping the hot water out of the jar very carefully. I'm using a clean, lint-free rag to wipe out the jar. My soup ladle is actually dirty, so I'm using a mug. I want to fill this up to where it has a 1/4 inch headspace. Headspace is the distance from the top of the jam to the top of the jar. My steam canner is over here, and I need to have the water hot. So what I'm doing is, because my stove is a little crowded while I'm canning, I'm actually taking the hot water out of these jars from sterilizing and pouring it into my canner. Next thing you want to do is take a clean washcloth and just wipe around the lids and clean off any jam that's on the lids that might keep your jam from sealing. If you have one that's a little bit too full, you're going to want to take a spoon some of it out. The tool that you're going to be using is this wand. It's called a lid lifter, and it's just got a magnet on the end so that you can drop it down in the boiling hot water and lift up your lid that you've had prepared. This just helps the rubber gasket to soften and get ready to seal. I'm wiping it off with the same lint-free cloth, and then I'm putting it on top of my jar. And I've got these rings. This is called a 2-piece sealing ring. Then I just want to tighten this down to where it's just finger tight. You don't want to wrench it down. And I'm putting it in my canner. When I put everything in my canner, I want to make sure that my jars are not actually touching, because they could clank together during the boiling process and potentially could break. It works best if you do this all like one step at a time. So you wipe the tops on all of them, and then you put all the seals, the lids and seals on, and then you put all the sealing rings on at one time, rather than doing one jar and then doing the next jar. It just makes everything go faster. Alright, so this is actually the lid to my steam canner. It's what I was using to sterilize the jars and the lids. This is my least favorite part of canning, is having to move large quantities of boiling hot water. Especially be careful if you have a small child. Make sure that you never carry boiling water over your child's head. So I'm just going to put this on top of here and turn it on high. I've got about 2 inches of water in the bottom of the steam canner, and I'm watching for a steady column of steam to come out these holes. Then I'm going to start processing it. Normally it's 10 minutes for half pints. Because of our elevation, I have to add an additional 5 minutes to my processing time. Make sure you check your own elevation wherever you live and figure out how much time you need to add. There's a chart available in the Ball Blue Book of preserving. Once you have a column of steam, you want to actually turn this down to about medium. You don't want to turn it down so cool that the steam stops coming out. But you also don't want to leave it so hot, because you'll boil out of water underneath your canning. So once your timer goes off and your jam is finished processing, open it away so that you don't end up with a steam burn on your face. And then I'm just going to take my jar lifter, set these aside right here beside the stove. Alright, I've got these all set out on a cloth, and they're just going to sit here for about 24 hours while they cool, and I'm just not even going to touch them. Not to take the rings off, just leave them alone until they're completely cool, and this will help make sure that the seal is good and tight.